Hello and welcome to the Futures Lab. So this week we're going to be creating these warning boxes, and we know that we need to make the warning boxes for Sans attacks, but we also should think about what sort of other attacks we want to have warnings for. Asgore has warnings for a lot of his attacks, and there's a lot of attacks that we've already made that we could make warnings for. So without any further ado, let's get to the code. So let's make a new sprite. Go to the bottom right corner and click on Paint. I'm going to move this sprite so it's not behind the head of my video. So this is a new sprite. I'm going to name this Warning. Now let's get the X as 0 and the Y as 0. And let's draw a red square that we want to be aligned with the square of our game. We want it to have no fill, a red outline, and I'm choosing to make it about 5 thick. Now I'm just going to do this manually. Yes, that looks perfect. Excellent. So we're going to call this costume Don't Delete. I'll give you 10 guesses why. It's because we're going to need this costume. We're going to be copying it a lot, and it's going to be just useful to have this as a reference costume for the inside of the box. So let's right-click, duplicate, and make little boxes for each of the sides that we want. So now we've got costumes for the left, for the right, for up and down, and you can see they all nicely fit inside our box there. I've made sure that all of these costumes are 25 pixels wide, so they're nice and consistent with each other, and now we need to name them. So I'm going to name these Gravity Bones Left, Gravity Bones Right, Gravity Bones Up, and Gravity Bones Down. Now make sure that you've spelled this all correctly. It will be very important later. Okay, well let's make a start on the code, shall we? Let's start off by hiding the original warning sprite, and then we'll use clones every time we receive a warning broadcast. So get out when green flag clicked, hide, and then get out a when I receive. We'll make a new message, and we'll call this broadcast warning, and we'll press OK. Now we could have a bunch of different broadcasts for every type of warning we could receive, but that's going to get really difficult. It's going to be a lot of broadcasts. So let's have one broadcast that tells us we need to do a warning, and then one variable to tell the warning sprite which warning to do. So go to motion and get out a go to X0, Y0. We want to make sure that this warning sprite is nicely centered. Then let's get out a switch costume to, and we'll make our new variable. Click on variables and make a variable. We'll call this warning. We could call it warning type if we wanted, but I think warning is just enough. Let's press OK, and we'll drag out our new warning variable and put it into our switch costume too. Then let's get out a create clone of myself. Okay, now we need to give some instructions to our clones when we make them. So get out when I start as clone. We'll go to the front layer. We'll set our ghost effect to 100. We'll show, because the original is hidden, we need the clones to show themselves. And then we'll repeat 5, then change ghost effect by -20. If we do that 5 times, we'll remove the ghost completely. Then let's wait for maybe 0.4 seconds. We'll fade it out again. And then we'll delete the clone. So that should be quite nice. the warning will fade in pretty fast, it'll pause just there, and then it will fade out again. So now I need some code to send these warning broadcasts and set the warning variable. Let's head into our projectile sprite and look around until you find your gravity slam attack, and look down until you find if not bones equals nothing. So just above our bone attack, we need to set our warning type first. So pull out set warning, and then after that we need to broadcast warning. Now what are we going to set our warning to? How are we going to make this work? Well, we already have names for our different types of costumes here, and it's always gravity, bones, then space, then the direction. So what we can do is use our direction input for our gravity slam attack. Let's grab our direction input, drag it all the way down to where we need it to be, and we're going to need to get out a join. So go to operators and look for join apple banana, get that and put that right here into your set warning. Let's get this direction and put it into the second slot of our join. In our first slot we need to put in gravity, then put a space, bones, and then another space. It needs to be spelled exactly the same as you spelt it in your other attack. This direction as well, you need to make sure that the left and right and up and down are all spelled the same way. Once we've checked all our spelling, let's give it a test, shall we? I'm going to make sure that we've got 4 different gravity slams inside our forever loop. And let's see what this looks like. Okay, that looks great. I'm really happy with how that looks. I'm not completely sure if the red square is exactly correct to the amount of space that the bones take up. So I'm just going to do a little experiment. I'm going to go to the warning and make this wait 4 seconds instead of 0.4 seconds. And we'll see what that looks like. Then I'll have a bit of a better idea. Oh, it's actually pretty perfect. But if yours isn't, then you can make the boxes larger or smaller if you want. Or you could always program the bones in your gravity bone attack to move a little bit further. Remember, if you go to your projectile sprite and look around for when I start as clone and look to the bottom, if you look for if costume name equals gravity, you can change these repeats if you want. That will make them move a little bit further out. Or a little bit less far out. You can also change this wait 0.5 seconds if you like. This is the pause in between the warning and the actual bone attack, so you can make it longer or shorter to make the game harder or easier. Alright, let's head back to the warning sprite and make sure that this is back to 0.4 seconds. Again, you can choose your own number for that if you like, but I like 0.4. So at this point we've got our warning system working. We can create new costumes for every new warning we want to make for every new type of attack. But at this point I was thinking, ooh, it'd be kind of nice to have a different warning system that didn't require you to keep making new types of costumes. So I decided to make a sort of exclamation point or exclamation mark warning system, and we could spawn multiple copies of them, multiple clones in various directions. And I was especially thinking this would be useful for the scatter attack that we did, because that attack is quite difficult to dodge unless you know it's coming. So I'm going to draw a new costume in our warning sprite. I'm going to call this exclamation. Now where I grew up in the UK, we called these exclamation marks. I believe in America they usually call them exclamation points. There we go, looking very little and cute there. And I'm going to put a triangle around it. And if you use this line tool, when you are making your lines, if you connect them up with each other, you'll get these cool sort of sharp edges, and then you end up having made a shape that you can then move around like this. And if you need to, You can also adjust the individual points if your triangle's a bit crooked. Once you're happy with your little triangle, just make sure the whole thing is nicely centered. And let's put some new code in our scatter attack to make this work. Okay, so once you've found your scatter attack, let's have a little recap of what it does. We've got two different inputs here, one for the direction, which is usually a word like top or bottom, and then we put in a number for the repeat, and that's how many projectiles get fired before it moves on to the next attack, like a 10 or whatever. We're going to add in a new input. Let's go edit onto define scatter, and we'll first go text add a label. We'll call this input warning, and then we'll click here, add an input, and for now let's just call it W. Press OK, and you'll notice we've got a bit of an issue now where these blocks are getting a little bit too long. Like if you're typing in bottom and repeat 10. If you want a shorter my block that's a bit easier to deal with, we could shorten these descriptions a little bit. Now this is entirely optional, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a bit more similar to the way that we did some of our other my blocks. I'm going to shorten the description from direction to D, and I'm going to call this direction. I'm going to change this repeat into an R and this R into a repeat. And I'm going to turn this W into a warning. And this warning here, I'm still going to call this warn, because if I put a W there, I might think it means wait, because we use W to describe wait a lot of the time. Let's press OK. And immediately you can see this is a lot shorter and easier to deal with. So it's entirely up to you. At the end of the day, these are your my blocks, so you can design them how they make sense to you. Now, one other thing that's entirely optional is I'm going to change these two words here from top and bottom to up and down. And that's because we use usually up and down everywhere else in our code instead of top and bottom. And I want the words that I use to be consistent through my code. Now, if you do change this, you'll notice that I'm also taking this from capitals to lowercase, and it shouldn't actually matter because this type of code is not case sensitive. A lot of other code will care, but this shouldn't care whether you're using capitals or not. But the one thing you're going to have to bear in mind is if you have your scatter attacks in the rest of your code, if you change it here like I have, you're going to have to go back and change this here as well. Okay, with that optional tidying up out of the way, let's get back to making our warnings work. We want to get this repeat and drag it down to make a gap right here. And we're going to put in that gap if not equal, and we want this warning input to be here and this to be nothing. So we've used this kind of code before. This means if we leave our warning blank like it is here, it will not do a warning. But if we put anything inside this warning input, then it will do a warning. The code that we're about to put inside this if. So let's connect this up again. Go to variables and get out a set warning, then go to events and get out a broadcast. Now let's make a new type of broadcast here. Let's click on new message. This is going to be a different type of warning broadcasts. So we could call this the exclamation warning. Exclamation warning. Press OK, and then after we've sent out our warning, we need to actually give the player some time to respond to it. So get out a wait 1 second and put it underneath your broadcast. One cute thing you could do if you wanted was get your warning input and put it over your 1 second. And this would basically make it so that you'd have to put a number into your warning input. And the number could be like 2 seconds or 4 seconds or 2.3, whatever you like. I'm going to leave that off for now because I just think I like 1 second. That's a good amount of time to get a warning for. But entirely up to you how you want to do that. Next, we need to decide what we are setting our warning variable to. Let's go to operators, get out join, put that right here, and let's overwrite the apple with scatter and then a space, and then get our direction input and put it over the banana, just similar to how we did before. So now we'll have scatter up, scatter down, scatter left, scatter right. So now we need to put some code inside our warning sprite that responds to when it receives the exclamation warning broadcast. Let's go there now, and we'll get a when I receive exclamation warning. Let's switch the costume to exclamation. Yeah, that sounds good. And then let's get out an if something equals, and we'll get our warning variable. So if our warning variable is scatter left, and make sure this is spelled exactly the same way as we did it here, then we'll repeat this maybe 15 times. We'll go to motion and get out a go to X and Y, and we'll say we'll go to X minus 90, let's say. And then we'll put in a random number here. We'll go to operators and get out pick random, and we'll say minus 100 to 10. And then we're going to get a create clone of myself and put it inside our repeat. And what that should do is get this little exclamation mark to create a bunch of clones of itself at random points alongside this left side of the box. You might need to change some of the numbers that I've got here if your box is a different size to mine, but let's give that a test, shall we? Let's head back to our projectile sprite and let's get some of these scatter attacks, and we'll put them inside our forever loop. I'm going to move these out for now and put this here, and left is the only direction that we've programmed to work so far. Let's make sure that we turn the warning on, and let's have a look. That's a very cool little effect. We've got all those exclamation marks appearing very randomly, indicating that we have an attack coming from the left. Okay, well, let's program in the rest of the directions, shall we? Let's head back to the warning and let's duplicate this. We'll change this to scatter right, and we'll change this X to 90. Then let's duplicate this and we'll change this to scatter up. Now remember, if you chose to keep it as scatter top and scatter bottom, you're going to need to use that instead, scatter top or scatter bottom. And we will move this across to here. We'll make this minus 90 to 90. And we'll make this Y about 10. Then we'll duplicate this whole thing. And we'll make scatter down work by changing this Y to minus 100. All right, let's create a few more scatter attacks. And we'll see how this all looks coming from all 4 directions. So we've got the left one first, that's good. And then the top one, yeah, excellent. Yeah, this is looking really good. I'm really happy with this. Yep, and that's all 4 directions. So, if you want, you could create some code that spreads out the exclamation marks a bit more evenly using some repeats and some moves and that kind of thing. I figured I would just go for something kind of nice and fast and fun and kind of easy with just these random numbers. But now you've got these 2 different ways of receiving warnings. You have the when I receive warning, where you use your warning variable to change to very specific different costumes, or you've got your when I receive exclamation warning, where you have just the one costume, this little exclamation mark, but you can send it to different places and make different numbers of clones. Now feel free to think about which other attacks you would like to create warnings for, but remember that not every attack needs a warning. It's entirely up to you. And aside from that, subscribe and ring the bell to see the next episode. Let me know in the comments what you would like me to do next, or if you need any help with your project. And stay awesome, be cool to each other, and take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time, ninjas.